Got it. All
Sweet.
right. So should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the poster and symposium portion of today's event. Can we do the next slide?
Mhm.
So we'll be starting off with symposium, Milagro and I, and then in a little while we'll hand it off to Bill from Arizona for the poster portion. So I'm Eric Gonzalez. I work for SDSU Mesa, the program coordinator there, and Milagro.
Hi, Milagro Ramos. I'm the outreach coordinator for SDSU Mesa. I am also a former Mesa student. I can't recall the year anymore, but B used to be my director.
And we're part of the SDSU team that's hosting nationals this year, and we hosted last year. And so, just to start off with a little bit of background, so why the symposium? I guess I was a chemistry major as an undergrad, and I didn't know how much presentations would be a part of my STEM career. And I think that happens a lot to maybe engineering students. Like I'm good at math, and I don't like presenting or writing reports, so I'll be an engineer. And then they graduate or they go to college and they learn they have to do a lot of presentations and write a lot of reports. So we're trying to get them experience in more real life applicable scenarios. So we helped create a symposium to model a conference like setting. Conferences are one of the main parts of a STEM career, and the students will gain experience in situations that are very applicable to their career. Can we do the next slide? So how do we model a conference like setting with symposium? We give more structure and we score differently than in a professional poster setting. So in prior rule cycles, the presentation was not scored. It was just part of the event. In the current rule cycle, we've started to give it a structure and score it using moderators, time guidelines, and specified questions, along with a specified framework on how to answer those questions. Because at a professional STEM conference, it's very free form, maybe a little chaotic, could be overwhelming for new students. So by giving them a conference like experience, but with a lot of structure and guidelines, we hope that this prepares the students better for their future. And by the time they do more rigorous and professional STEM conferences, they'll have done these symposiums a couple times and they'll be among the most experienced in their age group. Next slide, please. I think now I'll hand it off to Milagro for some of the updates of the rules and rubric.
Alrighty. So, like we mentioned, there is a rubric and rules so that there's structure to this kind of conversation, essentially, like scientific conversation. We're not super going to go into all those rules. We are still sticking with the STAR method, if you remember from last year. However, we do have some updates as to how they will be scored. So, more specifically for all the prompts, the points for structure, that's essentially going to be communicated to the judges that the STAR method is a one and done situation. They have to get the structure STAR in that kind of first shot. And it'll be 1 point per element. So if they want the full points for that one, then the situation, task, action, and result must be present in their answer. If any of those are missing, then they will then get docked points depending on what's missing. However, they can recover points in the context and overall. So if judges ask some follow-up questions and they're able to pull out that action and results, maybe they only give the situation and task, and through follow-ups, they can pull out that content or the action and results, then what they will do is that they will get more points for the context and overall. However, the structure points are kind of lost after that first try. But yeah, so just as a point to kind of like highlight that the structure is really important here and it will be looked at just like the one time, and then everything else will just be scored in context and overall. Additionally, to kind of relieve a little bit of the stress that the students are under whenever they're asked questions, now they can ask clarification as to whether a prompt is being scored. So if the judge asks a prompt, they can ask like, is this going to be scored? Or the judges may also announce that like, hey, this one's the one that I'm about to ask now is about to be scored. Just, be ready to kind of prepare your answer. This is also to differentiate between the actual prompts and follow-up questions. So that way they don't feel like they have to answer everything in STAR, just the stuff that they scored. Additionally, we did note at nationals last year that sometimes the verbal abstract did run a little bit longer, which started eating into the time for questions. And just to kind of ensure that teams have enough time to kind of go through all of the questions and answer very comfortably. We have enacted a 3-minute time limit. There are time suggestions on the rules as to how each of the subsections should be answered. Additionally, for the verbal abstract, the content being asked for now better aligns with a lot of the stuff that they'll be sharing throughout the symposium. So it more focuses on kind of like the design process and like their impact, rather than just kind of asking solely about their inequity and their project. But it is kind of included there, just not as heavily. And then also just a quick note, there is a typo in the total points for the symposium. If you look in the official rules, it reads that it says 80 points. It is actually 83 points. So we will fix that as soon as possible. But just something to keep in mind that the symposium is actually worth 83 points, not 80. Alrighty, and then we're going to introduce the rubric, the content and overall areas for the rubric. That's going to be under the assessment of prompts. It'll have structure, context, and overview right above the notes section. So those are the points that they can kind of recover for that. And then also we do have a new resource that we're going to introduce. This is kind of based on the feedback that we've received over the symposium. We had a lot of concerns that either students and or teachers don't know how to prep their students, or what's the best way to prep their students for the symposium. So we've kind of created this resource to kind of help guide that process. Eric, if you want.
So like Milagro said, it's based on feedback. I know preparing for sort of impromptu, maybe less certain experience could be difficult. So we wanted to help preparations. And so we built this on the framework of building a house. So starting with the foundation, that's something you do as the team is starting their project. And then the framework is what they should be doing after the project is done in the weeks ahead of their MESA day. So practicing the presentation. And then the final inspection is sort of things they should keep in mind on the day of. So starting with the foundation, they should really read and understand the rubric so they know what the judges are looking for and what's expected of them. They should be able to comprehend the official rules, knowing what instructions they have, what are their limitations, what are the expectations. They should know the prompt categories so they know the types of questions that will be asked. And there's even examples in the rules. So this is something they should keep in mind when they're starting their project and then moving over to framework. This is stuff they should do once their project is kind of done, but weeks before they go to their MESA day, they should be practicing STAR, the situation, task, action, result method of answering questions. It's a critical component of Symposium, so they should practice providing their information with a STAR structure. They should know how to receive full points by using the full method. We have resources on the right too on how to do STAR method. They should know how to recognize a prompt versus a follow-up question in their interactions with the judges. And an update to the rules, like Milagro mentioned, is that they can ask to confirm if the question is a prompt or just a follow-up. And then they should have a comprehensive understanding of their specialty. So maybe one of them is the coder, one of them was the designer, and they should be able to delegate between each other to help answer questions to the maximum extent they can. And speaking of delegation, I'll hand it over to Milagro for final inspection.
So final inspection, this is going to be a lot closer to the main event once they're kind of prepping to get into the actual competition, even up to like the few minutes before the judges are kind of coming up to them. But they should be able to recite their verbal abstract within that 3-minute time limit. At this point, they should be deciding whether one of the team members will take the lead, or if they're going to split if they're all going to kind of contribute to it, or maybe two, or however it is that they want to divide it, but it should be within that 3-minute time limit. They should also at this point be ready to recognize the knowledge of like the different projects and roles. So like if they know that they really focused on kind of like the user development stuff, and they're not very comfortable with the hardware, they should be able to kind of like point to like their team member and be like, I didn't really work on this, but my team member did. They can tell you a little bit more about that. They should also start rehearsing the use of supplemental materials. So if they want to kind of like point to their board, or if they want to like point to something on like the model of their project, this is the time where they should be practicing that. And then again, just knowing time constraints, just making sure that they are keeping their answers, I guess, like as detailed as possible within kind of reasonable time frame, so that it's not just kind of like a long rambling response. Of course, at this point, they should be kind of like practicing their cues. These could be signals. It could be like a verbal indicator, just so that way the team knows when it's time to transition or when they should like jump in if they need to. These cues is also really good for practicing dig. If anyone looked at the resource from last year, we did kind of provide this kind of dig, not mnemonic. What am I looking for here? I forget the word for it.
Acronym.
Thank you. But it refers to deferring to, so pointing to their partner and being like, oh, they actually know a little bit more about this, they can answer. In development, if they don't know the answer to something, they can say like, oh, that's something we're still researching. We're hoping to have it by the next iteration of our project. Or a gap in research is just something they didn't look into. So instead of saying like, I don't know, they can say like, that's not something that we looked at. This is what we looked at instead. And of course, we do have those resources linked within this file. And then, of course, final inspection, just making sure that they are practicing. Presenting does not come naturally. It is a learned skill. The more they do it, the easier it gets. And then just to kind of go over the resources that are on this, on top of the dig stuff, we have the two resources for STAR that were presented last year. So that's that one-pager worksheet with the videos and the worksheet. And then also the winter convening STAR method presentation. Well, you will see me again. And one of our SDSU undergraduates who presented at a couple conferences. And so she shares kind of like her experience with conferences. Additionally, we have two new symposium resources. One of them is going to be a closer look at task and action. So kind of better stating the difference between task and action, because it kind of just sounds like we're asking for the same thing, when like one of them is more kind of like an outline, and then the other one is just like, this person did this person did that, and then it kind of leads into the result of things. And then of course, just kind of like another review on STAR, what it is that we're asking for. And this is also a really good activity to kind of do with your students if you want to take like nursery rhymes or like fairy tales and turn them into like a STAR kind of response. So like, for example, in this one, it's like Little Red Riding Hood, where she was told to go to her grandma's house. She did not. And that kind of led to a whole lot of shenanigans, depending on which version you read. But yeah, so this will all be accessible at the end of this, and it will be shared. And then that will all also be linked in that new resource that we have. Alrighty. So before we kind of move on, we have maybe like 2 minutes if anyone has any questions. If not, I will also be in the chat answering them while Bill gets started.
I'm pausing for questions before I start.
Go for it, Bill.
Okay. All right. So next slide, please. So this is about the academic poster. I am Bill Pike. I am the primary author or person who did that. I'm in Arizona Mesa as the program coordinator. And much like what Eric and Milagro just said, this was all based off of what students would do in real life. And so the poster is based off of the senior design project at the University of Arizona, where the person who helped me design it also used to be a Mesa mentor. And so really kind of understands the program and really drilled down. So what students are doing is college level work, but at an age appropriate space. But one thing that I do want to do, next slide, please, is kind of set the vibe for the poster. And that vibe is this.
Okay, here we go. The short version. Do you?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
Good, you're married. Kiss her.
All right, we just witnessed a wedding in 10 seconds. And that's the idea behind the poster, is that we want students to give a short version of the year-long process that they did. Quick, easy, and then as they get into the symposium, it's going to lead into more questions from the judges as people are walking past, hey, tell me more about whatever it is that you're doing. So that's really kind of the vibe here. We want to give the short version of the work that they've done all year. All right, so next slide, please. All right, so here's the poster rubric. It has been shortened to one page based on feedback from people just to make it a little bit easier to use. And there have been a couple of changes. So what I want to do here is make sure that I highlight the changes that were made and make sure that everybody sees them. So next slide. I always put a lot of animations in my slide. Okay, so as we're talking about the prototype graphic, we want to make sure that it's a picture of the prototype, an actual picture. So take a picture of what it is. If you happen to be doing something with like an app or something like that, please include screenshots from the app for what it looks like, so that everybody can see what it is. And we want to make sure we highlight important features. And by doing that, it means something like this. I animated a lot in this slide, so be ready to click. So you can see here, this is a picture of a hand where there's a lot of call outs and things like that in there. And this is what we're hoping students are going to be able to do, is highlight those important features that are within their prototype. So if they have, here's something really cool that, was a little innovative, or this is an important piece of functionality or something like that, something to kind of draw the audience's attention to what's happening in their prototype. So a picture of it with some call outs, some boxes that say, hey, this is what this is. And then it gives them an opportunity also to then talk to people when they say, well, why is the fingertip called out for this? Oh, well, this is a insert whatever they happen to do with that. Next slide, please. Right. And so we want to make sure that they're labeling the important things. If they need to have some kind of scale, which was a thing last year where someone had a small app, but they mislabeled the scale, and so it looked like it was 3 feet by 5 feet when they really meant 3 inches by 5 inches. So make sure that we include that on there. And so with this, there's a ton of animations. So I don't know which one of you is controlling it. So it is tied to that last slide, but we also want to make sure that it's a good talking point as they're talking to the judges during the symposium, to be able to say, here, look, this is our tool that we're using to help do our presentation in the symposium. Here are some of these key features that we're going to highlight as part of our STAR method answers and responses in there as well too. Next. Okay, the visual data. So the visual data has been part of the poster for a long time. We do want to have visual data. This year, the shift has been made to make it more focused, to be more insightful into what's going on. So the first piece of visual data, and they don't need to label it visual data 1 or visual data 2 or anything like that, but it needs to be some kind of table or graph where the judges can see that they've been working with a user and they're getting information from their user, right? We are focusing on the user in this element. So make sure that your students are doing their testing, they're doing interviews, they're doing all sorts of things with their user to get their feedback on whatever it is that they're creating. Right? So we want to make sure that the focus in this data piece is on the user. Since we are integrating the user more purposely in what we're doing, we want to make sure that the students get points for that. And if students are not talking to a user, then they need to go out and start working with the user. Right. Next slide. Right. So visual data 2, I see my animation failed. This is talking about the testing results. So as they're doing the testing, what are those testing pieces that drove the development of the prototype. So if they did a test and it failed, great. Talk about why they made their change there. If they did a test and it worked really well, they're like, oh, we need to make another iteration to have some better performance in this area. Great, put that data in there. This is about the testing that they're doing. This is about that space where they've done the work, they've tested it. Now they're showing this is why we've made the design decisions that we've made. Right. And the testing data is really important for what they're doing because that's going to drive the direction they're going to go for the project. So we want to make sure that they're showing their testing data. Next slide, please. All right. This is new for this year. We've been asked to start doing some citations in this. And so on their poster, they need to have at most 3 citations. There needs to be at least one because they're going to go out and interview somebody. That interview should be one of their citations. If they did no other research in that, that's it. Great, they've got their interview for that. But it should be quick and succinct. We are not asking for any particular style. So it doesn't have to be APA or MLA or any of the, I think there's 17 different styles you can put onto a poster. We're not asking for style. We just want to know where are you getting your information from? What is your research? Who is that person you're talking to? You know, are you having some critical thing? If you have more than 3, that's fine. There's going to be a form to add more citations into that. You can use that, but we want the ones that are impactful for your project. So whatever those are, make sure you're including them on your poster. The specifics are in the rules. It's number 10 in the poster section, and then make sure you're including a part of an interview with your user. And then, of course, there are all sorts of resources. Right. So, Lago, can you click on poster template? There is a poster template that I've created for everybody. It is the proper size. So if we go to the NEDC website, you'll see here poster template. It is something that you can download. One thing that we did notice is that if you use Canva, it created some extra white space and actually took you out of spec. And so I put directions in there to be able to mitigate that so that everybody will be in spec no matter what they do. There are 2 example sort of templates and then a blank one, it's proper size that you can use to fill out for your team. Also on this site, you can see other projects that have been done in previous NEDCs. The rules are not quite the same, so don't use it as gospel, but definitely take a look at these and look for the winners of the events, like who won gold medals in poster for both middle school and high school, and that will give you the idea for what we're going for. Because the poster hasn't changed very much. We've just asked a little bit more in terms of specifics and then asking for the citations. And then the last thing that I do want to do is plug the Mesa USA curriculum because I am the chair of that committee. There is all sorts of resources on there for the entire NEDC project. I can put that back in the chat. It is open to everybody, so please take a look at it. We are updated. It's been updated recently. We are going to make sure to update it again after some things have come out of this so that all these resources are available to everybody who's on here and it's free to use. And if you have something that you think would be a great addition to it, you can let me know. I will put my email in the chat. I will be more than happy to take a look at it. And if we need to Mesify it, we will Mesify it and then add it and give you credence for your work. And so that's it all for poster. Are there any questions? Okay. Laura, do you mean the symposium guide that they just presented?
Correct. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. And then somebody put the Google Drive link up there, so I have it now. Thank you.
There you go.
So any last questions as we wrap up this segment?
Concerns, theories. I can drop my Venmo in the chat if in case anyone wants to give me a little tip. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, also just like a quick point of clarification. I know it was kind of discussed in the chat, but the note about students making up points in the not structure, context and overall, they can no longer receive the points in structure if they miss one of the elements, but they can score better, is what I should have said, in the context and overall by answering those questions, or providing extra context after the fact.
All right, looks like Luis is about to close these rooms, so we'll see you in the main session. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to do the survey, a link in the chat, and see you there. All right, I guess we're back. If there are any questions, you can pop them in the chat. If not, we could do a bit of a bio break.
case anyone wants to meet the teams from nationals last year, there is a meet the team video playing in the main channel in case anyone wants to check that out. Otherwise, we're gonna chill in here for another 3 minutes. Again, feel free to ask any questions that come up, or anything you're uncertain about. We're happy to help. Yeah.